what's up, y'all? How's it going? My name's Evan. Alright, peeled garlic. I hate doing it, but I found a couple of fun tricks over the years. So if you just start with a whole bulb of garlic and crush it, and then you just break it apart. Take 2 bowls. Ideally, one's a little bit smaller than the other, so it kind of fits in. But if you do this, keep it together real tight. Too much. Here I got my compost bowl. Always have a compost bowl. You put all your food in there. Alright, I'll save these over here. We're gonna concassate some tomatoes. Alright, so right over here, I got a pot of water. It's starting to get it a little hot. It's already kind of hot, but I'm gonna take it up to maybe a boil. We'll put a little bit of salt in there. And then here with the tomatoes, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go around, take out the top, right? And then you're gonna mark a little X just through the skin. All right. And turn it off. And you're just going to pour it over. And you don't have to wait long. I'm going to take ice. I'm going to pour out this hot water. You just need to leave it in there for like 30 seconds. Fill it back up with water, cold water, and then just pour your ice over. Let's clean some of these peppers up. Alright, so I'm just going to julienne these. Alright. Now with this, I'll quarter it. You can fillet the seeds out. And for funsies, I'm just gonna not julienne these, I'm gonna small dice them. So same way you would julienne them. And then you'll kind of have like an array of like cuts, and like it'll wind up with a little bit of different textures, and you'll be able to see what the spicy bits are. So that's one thing. Now these are probably ready. You just need them to kind of chill out a little bit. All right, we've got some tilapia here, whole tilapia. We're gonna do a little fish butchery. The first thing you want to do is cut off the fins. All right, cut off these little fins here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that to all of these. 1. Okay, we're going to do some fish butchery. Alright, we're gonna make some fish stock. So I I filleted all the fish, right? I deboned the fish, and here we've got the heads, and we've got the spines, and a little bit of the trim on the lower part of there. That's all good for the stock. We'll use that. We'll save that. We'll use it. The skin and other stuff, you don't want to use it all. All right, for the stock, it's going to be pretty simple. I've got some celery. It's going to be our mirepoix. You want to keep it pretty big because it's going to go for a little bit. So I've got this. You already got the celery. I've rinsed that. I'm going to do some carrots. I'm going to peel those carrots real quick here. All right. Going to give them a little rinse. And I'm just going to cut off this just this kind of dirty end right there. But with these, I'm just going to cut them in half. You just want them to be pretty big. All right, and then I'm adding the onion to the mirepoix. And anytime you have like vegetables or anything you want to add to a stock, keep it as large as possible. Because if you cut it really small, it might be a fun opportunity to work on your knife skills, but it's also going to overcook. And when something overcooks, even if it's imparting its flavor into a liquid, it's going to impart that overcooked flavor. I remember I cut like 20 quarts of mirepoix one time and I did it too small, and a chef was like, that looks beautiful, but we can't use it. So I had to start over again. So with this, I'm just going to go. There we go. All right, let's make the stock. It's pretty simple. So you want a stock pot. This one is a 7-quart stock pot. All right, I'll start in with my bones, the 3 heads. We got the mirepoix. And then we'll add water to it, but just enough to cover. You don't want to add too much water. And you always want to start with cold. That looks good right there. So I'm just going to put it on, like, I got an electric burner, but I'm just going to put it on medium-high heat. And then I'll put the lid on. All right, we're gonna make like a Cajun style tomato and pepper relish. So right here, I've got a 1/3 cup of sugar. I've got some red chili flake. I've got some scallions. We'll use that for garnish at the end. I've got garlic. I've got the tomatoes that we concassed. So we peeled them, took out most of the seeds. We strained all of that excess through a strainer, so we kept the juice. I've got some small diced jalapeno, and then I've got the julienne peppers right there. You're also going to need some apple cider vinegar. We've got that too here. And you'll need it in equal portions to the sugar. So here I have a 1/3 cup of the sugar, and I'll also use a 1/3 cup of vinegar. Let me show you how it's made. So I'm going to start pretty high pot right there. I'm just going to get it hot. Once it gets a little hot, I'm going to turn it down. But we'll start with the sugar in there, okay? And you want a clean pot. You don't want any kind of like, just make sure the pot is clean. And once you spread the sugar out, don't mess with it. Because what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a quick caramel with that. So here's the container I had the sugar in. Here's my 1/3 cup. Let's just make sure we get that. All right, equal parts right there. So yeah, I've got this on about 8, so it's about medium-high heat. And I'm not going to mess with it. When you're caramelizing sugar, you can add a little bit of water to make it, not crystallized. Adding a little bit of water will help it crystallize. But if you just have a clean pot and you have sugar, and you just put it on the heat, it'll start to caramelize from the top, from the bottom up. And if you don't mess with it, it's not going to like crystallize or get weird or funky into that. You just got to be kind of patient with it. So this is going. Once it gets a nice deep brown color, maybe a medium brown color, we will add the vinegar to deglaze. Trying to get a little brown. Not all that sugar's caramelized yet. Very gently. Turn it down low. Kind of pull it off here. You can smell it. It smells nice and nutty. It's not burnt yet. Even though it's got a little bit of undissolved sugar on there, it's fine. I'm gonna hit it like this. That's gonna stop the sugar from caramelizing. You're gonna encapsulate the flavor that you already have there. I'm gonna turn the heat back up a little bit. All right. Now next, go in all the tomatoes with their juice. Alright, so here I took the tilapia that I had filleted and skinned, and some shrimp that I took the shells off of. I just soaked them in some cream, a little bit of half and half, just so it's not too thick, but I kind of want it a little thick so it'll nice and neat here. Alright, then right here we've got tapioca starch and flour in 2 to 1, so 2 parts flour to 1 part tapioca starch. So I got about half a cup of flour in there, about 1/4 cup of tapioca starch. I got a good pinch of salt, some black pepper. I'm also going to do some shakes of paprika. And then I'll do a nice little shake of garlic powder here. Nice and garlicky there. I'm just going to mix that up. Tapioca starch is going to add a nice crispy element to this. So once this soaks for a little bit, I'm going to take it out, drain it. We're just going to lightly dredge it, and then we'll pan fry it. Alright, so now you can see it's almost kind of dry a little bit. Still got a little bit of liquid, but the body has changed. The texture, the consistency has changed a little bit. It's a little thicker. You've noticed everything's kind of melted down. We'll turn the heat down a little bit, and then now this is a good time for us to add all the julienne peppers. And once that all kind of cooks down, I'll give it a little stir here. But once it cooks down and gets to where we want, we'll finish with some butter, and it'll add a nice, like, silky, rich texture to it. Also, before I, at this point, I'll probably put a lid on it, but I'm gonna add a little bit of salt just to kind of get some of that moisture to go. Also, you want to season as you work through your cooking processes or steps, just because it builds flavor at each step. So if you start with just onions in a pan, season those onions. And then if you add garlic, just a little bit of salt, season that garlic. And then you add tomatoes, just a little bit of salt, just to season those tomatoes. You want to season in layers. That'll develop a lot more depth of flavor. So that's good right there. I'm just going to add the lid. We're going to let that hang out. Alright, so we're going to do risotto next, and for that, I definitely want to take an onion. We're going to small dice it. Honestly, the smaller the better, because it's just going to cook quicker, and you don't want crunchy onions in your risotto. That'll be good. That's kind of exactly what we're going for right there. Okay, I took the fish stock and I strained it out into another pot, and I have this nice cast iron pot here, and this is what we're gonna make our risotto in. So I've got it getting a little hot. It's getting there. More or less, this is what we're looking for right there. Just a small amount of oil, just to start. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to sweat out our onions. We're going to get them nice and tender before we add the risotto. So this is a borio rice. You can also do cannoli, what's it called? I can't ever pronounce these Italian words. But this is a borio, and that's the kind of thing. So what makes risotto good is the starch on the rice. You want to continually aggravate and stir the rice. That way the starches release into during the cooking process. There you go. Nice little sound action right there. Like I said, season in layers, so we'll get a little bit of salt in there. Alright, that's going on. I'm going to reduce the heat a little bit. One important thing is, when you're making risotto, you always want to have hot stock. You don't want to use cold stock. So right now, as we're sweating our onions, once those are nice and tender, alright, so here we've got the onions. They've been going for a little while, almost 10 minutes, kind of low and slow. Keeping them stirring, making sure we're not getting any color on there. We want them to be nice and translucent, nice and tender, nice and sweet. So we're going to add white wine. I'm going to add like a 5 count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. And then I'm going to crank the heat because that's not going to burn. You want it to burn off. You want the alcohol to burn off, but as long as there's liquid in there, nothing's going to like burn. So this is pretty much where I want it to be. What I'm going to do right here at the end is I'm going to turn the heat up pretty high. I want to see that rapid boil happening. Once that movement kind of happens, I'm going to emulsify some butter in here. So I got about 2 teaspoons, couple slices of butter. And so you want the liquid in there boiling, because as it's boiling, it's going to help emulsify the butter in there, so it's not all broken. Once all the butter is melted, we'll give it one last taste. Just make sure the seasoning's there, make sure the salt's there. Okay, over here, we're looking right where we want to. You see that wine, there's still a little bit of liquid in there, but mainly it's cooked out. So I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer, but it's gonna go pretty fast. All right, all that liquid's pretty much cooked out. I'm gonna add the rice. And before I add any of the fish stock, I am going to toast the rice a little bit. So you just want to coat it in all that fat and all that onion flavor. And that wine is going to start to just kind of absorb there a little bit. And so now we're going to start using the risotto technique. Now that the rice is in there, you want to keep it moving. Because all that rice is covered in a lot of starch. And that starch is what makes risotto nice and creamy and rich. But it's also going to want to stick to the bottom of the pan. And if it starts to stick, that's okay. It's almost inevitably going to. But once it starts to stick, that's when you'll add a little bit of your liquid. So I got the fish stock back here. It's hot, it's ready to go. The rice is coated, it's toasted a little bit, and I'm just gonna add it a ladle at a time. And you just wanna keep stirring. As you agitate the rice, it's gonna release more and more starch into the liquid that you're adding. So since we're doing it with seafood, I've got the fish stock here. So the fish stock is going to impart the flavor and cook the rice. But the stirring is what's going to make the starch release into the whole mixture. So you just want to keep it moving, keep it stirring. Alright, so here we go. I've been cooking it for about 15-16 minutes. I've been adding a ladle at a time, cooking it down, ladle at a time, cooking it down, stirring constantly the whole time. I just tasted it. Still got a little bit of crunch to it, but that's exactly where you want it to be, because at this point, you're gonna add one more final ladle here. You're gonna stir here a little bit. At this point, I've got cold butter. And this is 2 sticks that I've cut into about, that size right there. And I'm just gonna be very, very modest with it. Start with that. Also, one thing I want to add to it is just a dash of olive oil. Not too much. It's mainly going to taste like butter. A little bit of olive oil in there. And then at this point, it's going to look a little loose. It will look a little soupy, a little watery, but this is exactly what you want, because the last ingredient you're going to add is going to be a finely grated Parmesan cheese. And that's actually going to tighten it up a little bit, and it's going to be right where you want it to be. And then here I've got a bowl of Parmesan cheese. I'm just going to sprinkle that in. And that should change the texture to exactly where you want it to be. I'd say that's done right there. Take it off the heat. Yeah. Alright, so I got a cast iron skillet here, getting nice and hot. I got peanut oil here. I'm gonna go about a 1/4 inch deep. I wanna do nice, good amount of oil. We're gonna pan fry. It's not a deep fry, it's a pan fry, so you don't need quite as much oil as you think. So I've got my seafood that I've been soaking in a little bit of cream in half and half, and I got my flour tapioca mixture, so it's gonna be 1 part tapioca mixture to 2 parts flour. And then I just season it with whatever I like. I got garlic powder in here, paprika, salt, and black pepper. I just keep it really, really simple. You can throw celery seed in there. You can even do like a seasoned salt if you want to just throw seasoned salt in there that's already got all that stuff mixed in there. And I like to just give it a little taste, make sure it tastes good, make sure it's seasoned right. It tastes pretty good. So, I got my tongs here. Let it drain a little bit. All right, there we go. Just give it a little shake, and that's what you're looking for right there. A little more here. Alright. Alright, we're going to talk about meat for a second. So when you're picking your meat, I think about 3 C's when you pick your meat. First one is color. You want a dark, deep red color. This is nice and red right here. I have these 2 kinds. This one is pretty much nice. This is what you're looking for. This one right here, you're starting to see a little bit of oxidation. Once you get to that point, you want to try to pick a meat that's a little bit more red. If it's a lighter red, it means that there's a higher moisture content in the meat, and that's going to result in less flavor. It's kind of contradictory because you're thinking, oh, I want moisture in my meat because it's going to make a juicy product. But actually, a deeper red is going to have a higher concentration of the flavor because of the less moisture content, if that makes sense. And then, so that's the first C, is you want to look at the color. That's across the board, every meat, as far as red meat goes. And then the next C is going to be cut. Anything that's like rib, chuck, round, anything that comes from a part of the animal that gets worked a lot, so legs, brisket, anything like that, the bottom part of the ribs is going to need a longer cook time and a lower temperature. Anything that comes from a less used part of the animal, so like the fillet, ribeye, New York strip, sirloin, you can cook those for a lot less time. Once you identify the cut, then you can identify how you need to cook it. And then the last C is content, and by that I mean fat content, marbling. This one right here is really beautiful. You see all of the marbling right in here. Oh, it's really nice. This little part right here, the lifter that separates the cap from the actual ribeye, that one is actually my favorite part right there, and you see some good marbling in there, so that's definitely one you want to look for. I have a pan getting hot back here. I got some avocado olive oil. Nice little blend. It adds a higher smoke temperature to it. Olive oil has a tendency to smoke around 350, but when it's a blend with the avocado, it gets a little bit higher. I want just a little bit, not too much. I want that to just kind of smoke up a little bit. All right, so I've got the steaks that I've seasoned. They've been hanging out. They're tempered. They're up to room temperature. That's also going to help with the fat. All the fat's going to dissolve and penetrate the meat and make it taste better if you give it a chance to kind of warm up. Just to room temperature, it doesn't have to get any hot. So what I have the seasoned steaks. They've been seasoned for about 10 minutes. I got a few sprigs of thyme. I'm going to take some garlic. I'm going to crush it with my palm, but I'm not going to take it out of the skin. What's going to happen is I'm going to sear the steaks. And then when the steaks are all nice and seared, they'll still be pretty raw on the inside. I'll add cold butter. This is Irish unsalted butter. I always like to cook with unsalted butter because you can control the seasoning. If you are cooking with salted butter, just season your steaks a little bit less or whatever you're cooking with. But you want to leave the skin on the garlic because when you add it to the pan with the cold butter, the skin is going to protect it from burning. It's not going to burn, it's not going to taste bitter. And you're not actually going to eat the garlic, but the garlic's going to infuse with the butter that you based the steak with. Now with searing the steak, you want to get the pan pretty much as hot as you can get it. Once the pan without any oil in it starts to smoke, then you'll add the steak, not before that. The pan has nothing in it, it's starting to smoke just a little bit. Just as it starts to smoke, I mean right when it starts to smoke, you'll add just a touch of oil. Not too much here. I'll take the steak. Now these are pretty big, so I'm only going to cook one at a time. Start with that sound. That sounds what you want. If you're not getting that kind of reaction when the steak touches the pan, the pan's not hot enough. It needs to be hot. You want to cook it really hard and really quick on the outside, and then you'll be able to lower the temperature and bring it up to the desired temperature once you add the butter. What this is going to be. So I started with the edge because, well, you want to sear the edge because you'll get a better flavor, all that Maillard reaction, all that browning on the outside. But start with the edge because you can still hold a cold steak with your hand upright like that. If you start with either one of the sides, it's going to be hot and you're not going to be able to hold the steak in place. And if you don't want to hold the steak in place, you can just use this, like that. Alright, so we got some nice browning on the outside. I'll do a little bit right there too as well. Gently press down so it's all getting seared. My time as a chef, I got to experience a lot of different tools. These are called Kuhn spoons. So Gary Kuhn's, K-U-N-Z. These are, yeah, you can get a little look at it right there. These are a great brand. They have slotted, they have non-slotted, they've got all kinds of different sizes. Really versatile knife, really feels good, or not knife, but spoon, really feels good in your hands too. And when I cook, I just cook with a spoon usually. I'd have some tongs and other things like that, but more or less you just cook with just a spoon. There you go, that's what you're looking for right there. It's got a little dark right there, but I would rather have it get a little dark than have it look more like it does in the center. So you're going for this right here. So that's what you want right there. Gently press. A lot of people will put too much pressure on it, and that's just going to leak out the moisture. So it's a little blonde right there, little unbrowned. You can baste just a little bit right there just to get it back up to temp right there in the center. Get that browning. This happens pretty quick, so you gotta be willing to get in there and work kind of fast once you start to sear it. Right now, steak is still pretty rare. I think we're probably almost where we want it to be. Yeah, that looks good right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out the excess oil. I'm gonna lower the temperature of the pan and flip it back to the original side that we seared. And then in goes the butter. Couple garlic cloves. Few sprigs of thyme. And we're gonna baste. So, point the handle towards you, tilt it so you get a little bit of a pool down there. You want to mainly focus on basting towards the bone. If you have a bone-in steak, especially if you have a bone-in steak, you want to baste closer to the bone because the meat closer to the bone is going to take longer to cook. All right. There's a few different ways to tell what the steak is cooked to. There's a couple different tricks. You can use a thermometer to check the internal temperature. That's probably the most accurate way, but those thermometers are usually kind of thick. They poke the meat, and I don't always think it's the best way. And you don't always have time to do it, especially if you're cooking in a kitchen. So a cool trick that I learned was you feel the pad of your hand by doing this. If you put your thumb to your index finger and you feel the pad right there, your thumb pad, that's what a rare steak feels like. That's what a mid-rare steak feels like. That's what a medium steak feels like, and that's what mid-well to well feels like. That's a little fun trick right there. You don't apply any pressure, just do it as soft as possible. This right here should be about a medium steak right there. All right, so we're doing chicken stock. Basic things, always, you're gonna need what's called mirepoix. This is kind of like the foundation for a lot of French cooking. It's going to be 2 parts onion to 1 part carrot and 1 part celery by weight. So I've got twice as much onion, pretty much equal parts as the onion and the carrot in that. And with stock, it's always important that you have washed vegetables, cleaned vegetables, already pre-washed and pre-cleaned. But you also want them to be large chunk. A lot of the time, people cut the vegetable too small and they cook too quick once they're in the stock. So chunkier is better. So I'm just going to cut those in half. I'm going to cut the ends off the carrots here, the rib end, have my compost bowl over there. And then with this, I'm going to cut them, but I'm going to cut them a little bit closer to this side because they taper off. That's it right now. And with the onions, I take off the root end. I don't cut all the way through. I pull off a little bit. It helps you get a little bit. You can peel off that way if you want to, but also another way is to just cut right through. Now usually it's better to be a little bit more generous when you peel off an outer layer of the onion because it has a tendency to get a little papery. Just that little, go one more deep if you think, in half. And I'm just gonna keep them cut in half. And whenever I work, I always have a white towel, so that's wet. I have a dry towel for grabbing hot things, and I have a compost. Anything that you don't want to throw away, any kind of food product, anything like that, all goes in there. Also have a bunch of thyme, probably about, I don't know, like that much. However much you want. Next pair of chicken stock is the chicken. There we go. This is probably about a 7.5 pound bird. I've let it kind of dry off a little bit. You don't want it to be too wet when you work with it. It'll slide off. So when deboning a chicken, first thing I like to do is take it out of the sockets. And let's cut right here. Anytime you're deboning any kind of animal, whether it's a bird or really anything, you don't want to cut meat. You want to cut in between the meat. So all the way through here into the skin, you've gone through that, pop out the hip sockets. Then you can go around and cut in between the hip sockets. That's 1 leg quarter. Here's another leg quarter. And then you're left with the breast. The breast is going to have a breastbone that runs vertically, top to bottom right here. It's easy to kind of feel, especially when you get about to the lower half of the breast. You want to run the knife straight down on both sides of that. So the first incision will go on top of that, straight down, and then on the other side also, straight down. Ideally you have nothing on there, but that looks pretty good to me. Alright, and then once you get down to the bottom rib cage, so it's going to be underneath here, you just run your knife along the bone. So there's bones right back in here that are like the back of the chicken. You don't want to cut the actual meat, you just press your knife up against the bone just to get it released from where it is. You go all the way down until you get to the chicken wing, and you'll cut to the top all the way down to the chicken wing, and then once you get down there, it should be pretty much detached already. That's what's going to have the chicken wing separated or connecting to the like the torso of the chicken, and all you have to do right there is just cut through. And you can do the other side. So you'll get to there's bones here on the back. You just want to run the knife along that. You're not trying to cut meat, you're just trying to cut in between the bone. And then this tendon right here is what's going to be connecting. See, if you have a hard time finding the knuckle being where the joints connect, just kind of work your knife down into it. You don't have to go too fast. There you go. Alright, so that's all the meat of the chicken, and this is what we use for the stock. I also like to use chicken feet for the stock. Most of the flavor is going to come from the chicken carcass itself, but a lot of the body is going to come from the feet. Now there's two ways of doing it. You can make a blonde chicken stock, or you can make a brown chicken stock. If you want to make a brown chicken stock, you can roast these in the oven at about 400 degrees for about 25 minutes. Or if you want to do a blonde standard chicken stock, they'll go straight into the pot. So here I have our stock pot. Do the chicken carcass, chicken feet. And then I will come in with the mirepoix. So that's the onions, 2 parts, carrot 1 part, celery 1 part. You can take the leaves out. I like to leave the leaves in. It's actually really good for garnish too. Really tasty. Anytime. Cover that with cold water just until it covers the contents of the pot. You don't want to cover it more than that. As soon as you can kind of push down and it covers up to your hand, and it just dilutes the stock. More water, less flavor. It's kind of a general rule of cooking. Alright, so I'm going to put it on medium-high heat. I'm going to cover it, but I'm going to keep my eyes on there. In fact, I'm going to start a timer for 12 minutes. I'll check it in that. It's okay to have a stock come up to a boil, but you don't want it to keep a boil. As soon as it comes up to a boil, you need to turn it down. I like to think of stock as almost like you're making tea. You just want the bones and the contents of your mirepoix to like steep. That kind of low simmer, that's the perfect temperature to extract all of the gelatin out of the chicken carcass, which is going to, what's going to get the stock flavor, and it's also going to give it a lot of body to it.